Welcome back to Night TV, where we obviously can't get our intro together.
It's not that I want you here, yeah. It's not the way you say it to my eyes.
I want to take this time to introduce you guys to a new segment which I have entitled Night Investigates, because death on a dirt road is not appropriate because there are no dead victims, only living. So in these cases, we're going to be using that title. With that being said, today's feature will be James Kester, who ran his car into a group of mourners in the Columbia, South Carolina cemetery after he held a grudge against the Department of Mental Health for treatment of his daughter. The motive was simple: revenge, which was what James Kester wanted when he ran his car into a group of 36 mourners, injuring 12 of them. A funeral was being held for Margaret Livingston, a longtime mental health employee, when James did the unthinkable. Police did not believe that James knew Margaret or her family. He just saw an opportunity to exact revenge and on the perfect person in his eyes. Witnesses said that James drove up to a group of mourners and asked them who was the funeral being held for. And once he was told, he rolled up his window and slid his car right into the group. Family members said after the first time, they even noted that James was turning around preparing to do the same thing again. After the initial time of James hitting everyone, chaos ensued, and he got bogged down after hitting a tombstone and was not able to move his car, thankfully, to do the same thing and hurt even more people. People were running to check on their family members. They were dialing 911. Witnesses said it looked like something out of a movie. They had never seen anything like that before.
From what I've been told, they were actually during the service at the time of the incident, and when the car came up. So we don't know if they're a part of the family or friends at this time.
Family members rushed down to the courthouse for Kessler's initial hearing and asked the judge to deny bond, which they would be disappointed to know that that was not going to happen. James Kester argued that the $5 million bond set on his behalf was too steep, but the judge decided that he was going to raise that bond if Kester did not take a seat, and he did so without further interruption. He stated that he had just simply blanked out and didn't know what happened after mercilessly injuring 12 people and preparing to do it again. He claimed that he had just simply blanked out, as though it's something that you see every single day. A Department of Mental Health spokesperson said that Livingston was a long-standing and respected employee, and there were actually employees at the funeral at the time. Thankfully, none were injured. The Department of Mental Health extended their most sincere apologies and offered emotional support to those employees in attendance. Margaret Livingston was an employee from 1976 to her retirement in 2011. Kester was given strict instructions, should he be able to bond out, that he was to have no contact with the family of Margaret Livingston or any of the victims. He would also not be able to drive, and he was to wear a GPS monitor at all times. Kester was charged with 12 counts of attempted murder for the assaults at the Green Lawn Memorial Park in Columbia, South Carolina. Several of the injured parties were treated at the cemetery before being transported to local hospitals for further treatment. 5 patients were taken to Richland Memorial Hospital, with one of them being in serious condition and the other 4 being in fair condition.
12 people were injured and taken to the hospital. 7 were released. Of the 5 still in the hospital, 1 is listed in serious condition. The others are listed in fair condition. None of those injuries are believed to be life-threatening.
The remainder were taken to Baptist Hospital from the ages of 11 to 78, and they were all discharged shortly after. A spokesperson for the cemetery themselves said that they were deeply saddened by the incident. They were working with local authorities to assist in any way possible. Kester was called a terrorist for those attacks simply because he was angry at the treatment of his late daughter. Not simply, but simply. That was his motive. He didn't even know the woman who was being eulogized at the time. He just found someone who was a representative of the place that he hated so much, and he decided that he was going to go on a rampage and try to kill as many people as possible. Kester was only found guilty of 8 counts of assault and battery. He was acquitted on the attempted murder charges. Kester did act as his own attorney. Editing Night here, and I just want to let you all know that a man by the name of William D. Britton stated that before you act, it's prudent soberly to consider, for after action you cannot receive without dishonor. Take the advice of some prudent friend, for he who will be his own counselor shall be sure to have a fool for his client. Take that into consideration. And he vented his frustration at the Department of Mental Health during his closing arguments, which in the end landed him with 10 years for each count of assault and battery, and he was later sentenced to 80 years in prison. The judge compared Kester's actions to terrorist attacks in England and France. There was no reason other than that to drive his Cadillac Seville into a group of mourners on that day. Of Kester's attack testified before the court describing broken arms, legs, hips, memories of that night, as well as sleepless nights after all of this. Some even testified that they lived with constant pain. Kester was said to be a danger to himself and others should he ever get out of prison and be free to walk around Colombia or anywhere else for that matter. So let me tell you all my thoughts on Mr. Kester. If you look at some of the photos that I provided here, this one in particular, he looks, well, for lack of a better word, crazy. And that's exactly how he appears. Now, the other photo was an updated photo of him that was taken at the prison once he was already booked. So in recent years, this photo was taken after being medicated. He was on my caseload at Broad River Correctional Institution. And every time I had to have Mr. Kester in my office for any reason, he simply grunted. I could never have a real conversation with this man. He was not a conversationalist in any way. He looked outraged every time you ever talked to him. So really, I can't say that I ever had a full conversation with Mr. Kester. I can just say that he would nod his head yes and no, just enough to get by for a review. But I can see why he would have done what he did. Like, if I looked at him, I would think that he was something of a terrorist, only if we're taking looks into account only. Because I, once again, cannot say that I ever had a full conversation with this man. I am not sure if he is capable of that. I mean, I was really taken aback every time that I ever had to have any kind of interaction with him. He is on the character unit, which also surprised me, but that just means that he doesn't have any disciplinaries and he probably wants to be protected just like everyone else around him. I am not sure. Broad River Correctional Institution is not the safest place. And Mr. Kester is not a spring chicken. So I'm sure he doesn't want to be out there fighting and doing everything else that it requires to stay alert and stay alive on that yard. So I can understand why he might have applied to be on the character unit, because anything else as far as participating in programs or anything like that, I can't see it. I've never seen him do anything outside of help clean the unit, just the tiniest bit. He does work as a ward keeper assistant. The only thing that means is he cleans the unit. That's simply a nice way of saying that. And he's getting 2 for 7 credits, which somebody needs to do something about that, because ward keeper assistants don't normally get that many credits. But anyway, he has an 80-year sentence, which means that's a mandatory service requirement. So he's going to do at least 85% of that before he's released out of prison. So those credits are not really helping him in any way. It's just rare that you will see what people call, or what is called, a ward keeper assistant receiving that many credits. But that is my assessment on Mr. Kester. Really not a whole lot to say. The man does not speak. He is a character just simply by looks alone. Anything else, I cannot tell you, and I cannot say. That was my interaction with him. The unit assistant, or the unit manager who was there when I was there, she kind of gave me the rundown on him one day after I questioned her when he left my office, because I was left reeling after the interaction, because I didn't know what to say or do. Like, the man he just grunted every time you talked to him, as though it was really hurting him to have to answer questions or to give a yearly review, which I understand that it might be frustrating, because really with an annual review, if you have like a life sentence or a longer sentence and it's a mandatory service requirement, you're not going anywhere. So you're just going through the motions. But I was just doing my job, Mr. Kester, you know. But that's going to wrap up this episode of Night Investigates. It's a shorter episode. There wasn't much to say. As I stated, no one died, so we're not going to call this a death on a dirt road or a murder on the move. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about these kinds of episodes, and I will see you in the next one.
Something about the way you said it to me.